The Tiger's Whisker, a Korean folk tale. Once upon a time in a village in Korea, a young wife named Yoon was at her wits' end. Her husband, who had once been a tender and loving soulmate, had now become distant, often angry and unpredictable. She was almost afraid to live with her husband. Only in an occasional glancing moment did she catch a shadow of the husband she used to know and love. Near the village was an old hermit who lived in the mountains. When one ailment or another bothered people in the village, they would rush to the hermit for a cure. But not Yoon. She always prided herself that she could heal her own troubles. But this time was different. She was desperate. So Yoon decided to approach the hermit's hut. She saw the door was open. The old man stood with his back to her. Without turning around, the old man said, "I hear you. What do you want?" Yoon explained the situation. With his back still to her, the hermit said, "Ah, yes. It's often this way with men. What do you expect me to do about it?" "Make me a magic potion," cried the young wife, "or an amulet, a drink, whatever it takes to get my husband back the way he used to be." The old man turned around. "Young woman, your request doesn't exactly fall into the same category as a broken bone or an ear infection." "I know," she said. The old man said, "It will take 3 days before I can even look into it. Come back then." 3 days later, Yoon returned to the hermit's hut. "Yoon," he greeted her with a smile, "I have good news. There is a potion that will restore your husband to the very way he used to be. But you should know that the potion requires an unusual ingredient. You must bring me a whisker from a live tiger." "What?" she gasped. "Such a thing is impossible." "I cannot make the potion without it," he shouted, startling her. Then he turned his back and said, "There is nothing more to say. As you can see, I'm very busy." That night Yoon tossed and turned. How could she get a whisker from a live tiger? The next day before dawn, she crept out of the house with a bowl of rice covered with meat sauce. She went to the cave on the mountainside where a tiger was known to live. She clicked her tongue very softly as she crept up, her heart pounding, and carefully she set the bowl on the grass. Then, trying to make as little noise as she could, she backed away. The next day before dawn, she took another bowl of rice covered with meat sauce to the cave. She approached the same spot, clicking softly with her tongue. She saw that the bowl was empty and replaced the empty bowl with a fresh one. Again she left, trying not to break twigs or rustle leaves or do anything else to startle and unsettle the wild beast. So it went, day after day, for several months. She never saw the tiger. Thank goodness for that, she thought. She knew from the footprints on the ground that the tiger, and not a smaller mountain creature, had been eating her food. One day as Yoon approached, she noticed the tiger's head poking out from its cave. Glancing downward, she stepped very carefully to the same spot and with as little noise as she could, set down the fresh bowl. With her heart pounding, she picked up the bowl that was empty and quietly left. After a few weeks, she noticed that the tiger would come out of the cave as it heard her footsteps, though it stayed a little distance away. Thank goodness, she thought again, though she knew that someday, in order to get the whisker, she would have to come closer to the tiger. Another month went by. Then the tiger would wait by the empty bowl as it heard her approaching. As she picked up the old bowl and replaced it with a fresh one, she could smell the tiger's scent, and it could surely smell hers. She noticed the tiger's almost kittenish look as she set down the fresh bowl. Actually, she thought, it's a rather friendly creature when you get to know it. The next time she visited, she glanced up at the tiger briefly and noticed a lovely downturn of reddish fur it had above its eyebrows. A week later, the tiger allowed her to gently rub its head, and it purred and stretched out like a house cat. Then she knew that the time had come. Very early the next morning she went to the tiger's cave. She brought with her a small knife. She set down the fresh bowl, and the tiger allowed her to pet its head. Then she said in a low voice, "Oh, my tiger, may I please have just one of your whiskers?" After petting the tiger with one hand, she held one whisker at its base, and with the other hand, in one quick stroke, she cut the whisker off. She stood up, speaking softly her thanks, and left for the last time. The next morning seemed endless. At last her husband left for the rice fields. She ran to the hermit's hut, clutching the precious whisker in her fist. Bursting in, she cried to the hermit, "I have it! I have the tiger's whisker!" "You don't say," said the hermit, turning around. "From a live tiger?" "Yes," she said. "Tell me," said the hermit, interested, "how did you do it?" Yun told the hermit how for the last 6 months she had earned the trust of the creature, and it had finally permitted her to cut off one of its whiskers. With pride she handed him the whisker. The hermit examined it, satisfied himself that it was indeed a whisker from a live tiger, and then flicked it into the fire, where it sizzled and burned in an instant. "What have you done?" Yun cried, horrified. "Yun," the hermit said softly, "you no longer need the whisker. Tell me, is a man more vicious than a tiger? If a dangerous wild beast will respond to your gradual and patient care, do you think a man will respond any less willingly?" Yun stood speechless. Then she turned and stepped down the trail, turning over in her mind images of the tiger and of her husband back and forth. Now she knew what she had to do. The end, or maybe a new beginning.